Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Consummate Athlete Podcast. I'm Molly Herford, author of 4 books on cycling nutrition, cycling comfort, and all things riding related, lover of all things fitness related.
And I'm Peter Glassford. I'm a registered kinesiologist, professional cycling coach, and a moderately talented bike racer who also just likes movement and all different types. That's why I went into kinesiology, and that's why we started this podcast, The Consummate Athlete.
And this week, we're actually both acting as coaches, this month, in fact. We're out in California at a training camp with a bunch of really talented U23 and junior racers from Ontario. We've been having some pretty rainy weather, so it's made for some interesting adventures.
Yeah, it's been good. I mean, my coaching philosophy is large on the experiences and skills, so we've been working a lot on not only the fitness, we've been doing some big rides and hard rides, climbing big mountains, but today we're working a bit on pace lining into a crazy headwind, and we're learning how to dress appropriately and fuel for these big rides and, deal with some adversity. We got a really wet, muddy driveway that a lot of the track riders have not been exposed to. So it's a really, really good camp, even with the sort of odd weather the West Coast is getting. I look forward to my usual retreat to California weather here, hopefully in the next week or so.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you also head over to mollyherford.com, you can sort of see some of the other stuff we've been, dealing with as far as some nomad and van life stuff, van life in the rain, what to do for work when you have no internet, a little more digital nomad versus consummate athlete. But if that's the kind of thing you're into, I know a lot of our listeners really enjoyed our van life episodes, so some interesting stuff there.
Yeah, I've basically been retweeting Molly for my writing as I've been pretty drilled with the camp and trying to train and keep actual coaching clients going here. But it's all good. It's all bikes, and we've been having a lot of fun.
Yeah, and this morning we got to get up super early. I thought I was going to be really tired to do this episode, but actually I was pretty invigorated by the time we got on the phone with my very good friend Carolyn Gaynor, who I raced with collegiately. We sort of get into that a little bit. We didn't really know each other that well in college, but we got to know each other a couple years ago when I was in her then living area of Austin, Texas. We got to hang out, had tons of great food, did some great swims together, reminisced about our triathlon days. But she also told me about her newest kind of adventure she got into almost 10 years ago now, which is guiding Ironman for blind racers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it was really interesting. We went out to dinner in New York, and sort of after the meal, I sort of had mentioned to Molly that Carolyn would be a great guest on the podcast because she's done a lot. She mentions water polo. She just keeps dropping random sports she's done. But I thought this guiding and this sort of different approach to racing Ironman or racing marathons or racing endurance sport was something that a lot of you listeners, you consummate athletes, might be interested in. Some of the athletes who are maybe looking for another purpose or another, reason to go out and do another Ironman or go out and do another marathon or any sort of race, really. I mean, it's coming to all different races now, and so I think this is a really good episode, good message that Carolyn brings, and she has a really good energy for life and movement, and really is that consummate athlete with all her. She works really hard and plays really hard and trains hard, obviously, so she can complete these. So yeah, I think a really solid episode. It's recorded in a McDonald's, so listen closely, or maybe not so closely, for the sound of pop and soda and ice cubes.
I think we did a pretty good job with the muting. I feel like you just threw me under the bus a little bit there.
It was on both of us. It was a McDonald's. That's just the scene. I'm setting the scene here as you listen to this episode.
And then go check out mollyherford.com and read the article about what to do when you have no internet or cell phone service in your house. Step 1, go to the McDonald's. Anyway, enjoy the episode with Carolyn. I know we had a great time doing it.
Welcome back to the Consummate Athlete Podcast. Before we get going, let's hear a word from our show's sponsor, Health IQ. Health IQ provides life insurance for healthy, active people like yourself. Dare I say, consummate athletes like yourself. They have competitive rates and a great website. If you can go check it out at healthiq.com/consummate,
Consummate Athlete. You'll help us out, and you'll be helping yourself out by finding out a little bit more about life insurance, whether you need it, and what some options are. No pressure, just go check out the website, try a quiz. Thanks, guys.
We have Carolyn Gaynor with us today, and we went out to dinner. Carolyn's a friend of Molly's, and we went out to dinner in New York City, and I was very impressed. She seemed like a very well-rounded person, but had a great sort of story around racing as a guide for people in Ironman. So today we have Carolyn with us. Thank you for joining us, Carolyn.
My pleasure.
Just dived right in there.
Yeah, I figure
That's
why
pretty
not.
good.
So we've been rambling on here and having great conversation. And again, that's what we were really impressed with Carolyn. She's very good. She's got lots of crazy stories. She works full time, has lots going on. So yeah, so let's get right into that then. Molly, where did you want to start?
Oh man, I guess I'm thinking back to when Carolyn and I were crazy bike racers.
Yeah, so why don't you start? 'Cause I mean, that's part of the progression we're looking at is, a lot of people do start really serious, and that's the nature of sport, right? But then we, have to find a purpose and a reason to keep going and become, we have to go to work at some point and become well-rounded people and stuff like that. So why don't you guys drive on that? Like, how do you get to that?
Can I interject for one moment? To
You're
be
the
clear,
guest.
you can be serious about something and not actually be good. So if we are talking about my initial, cycling career, I loved it and I was very into it, but I've never been talented in any way. So I just want to make sure that's set up front.
I don't think that's quite fair, but maybe we'll say that neither of us were ever going to go pro with it where we were getting thrown money at bikes.
I still carry around the $10 I won at Batten Kill in 2007. So
Oh my
if that tells you
God.
anything.
Like in your purse? Where is that $10?
Well, it's in a wallet that I don't use anymore, but yeah, it's still there.
Huh.
Oh, that's fantastic. I wish I'd framed the one check that I've ever won.
Exactly. It was cash. It was great.
That $25 is not getting me anywhere, so kind of wish I still had it.
So did you start in collegiate, similar to what Molly
did?
Yeah. And just with crits?
Yeah,
and
I was
stuff?
a rower
Oh.
initially. Yeah, well, so I was a rower, and then I was I quit rowing, and in order to prove that I didn't quit to become an alcoholic, I signed up for an Ironman. But a friend of mine
As one does.
convinced me to join the yeah. I was like, I got to make sure. And so I joined the Columbia cycling team and raced my junior and senior year. Raced in quotes.
Yeah.
So you raced to get ready for an Ironman, or that was after?
It was during. So the Ironman was it was November of 2005. I raced the spring of 2005. And I will say that bike racing completely changed my I guess, everything about how I rode a bike, and it certainly helped my performance in triathlons.
That was pretty much exactly the same story I had. For example, I learned that bike shorts were a thing that I previously did not know about when I was training for triathlon. So
yeah, I learned how to change a flat. Like I learned how to take the aero bars on and off my bike. I mean, all these silly things that I had no idea how to do any of it.
I, on the other hand, did not take my aero bars off the bike. I just pulled the bars off and raced crits with them.
I love that picture.
As you pointed out.
I love that I have these random pictures of you before I even really knew you.
I know. It's so funny because we kind of knew each other in collegiate, and then we hung out a couple times in Austin, Texas, which is a bit of a change from our New York, New Jersey upbringing.
8 years after the collegiate stuff. Let's, again, be clear on that. This was way later.
Oh, we're so old.
Sorry.
But at that point, you shifted from racing crits and, the occasional triathlon to suddenly being this crazy endurance person who's doing Ironmans as a guide, and you did RAM. So did you get addicted to long endurance events, or how did that shift happen?
And maybe it's, my lack of talent, but the long stuff I've always liked because it's one of those things where it's about who's going to stay in the race,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that certainly is how it was during RAM. But the Ironman stuff, again, I did one when I was a senior in college, but then I didn't have any interest in doing another one for a long time. And in 2010, a woman who's now my good friend, Patricia Walsh, found out about me through a friend in New York because she was training for an Ironman. She wanted to be the first blind female to do an Ironman with a female guide. And she was training. She had a guide locally in Seattle where she was living. And they fell. They were riding their bikes when it was wet out, and they fell on railroad tracks. It was really slippery. And her guide broke her wrist. And this was 5 weeks before the race. So I was in bike racing shape at the time. I was not in Ironman shape, but I had experience guiding, and so I figured I was her best shot. So, I agreed to do this race 5 weeks out. And what's funny is, we have these Facebook memories now, and that's a recent addition to Facebook. But this past summer, I saw this, update from, 6 years ago. You posted, "Can anyone help me get ready for an Ironman in 5 weeks?" And so it was like I know it happened, but it's still funny to actually see the evidence just like pop up and get like thrown in your face,
Okay, so I have to ask, how did you get ready for an Ironman in 5 weeks and get ready to guide an Ironman in 5 weeks?
Well, you can't. I mean, I'm just really lucky that I was physically able to do it. I think people underestimate what they can accomplish with minimal specific training. I did a few long runs and I did a few long swims leading up to it, and the rest is nutrition and then base that you just have built up from years of training. I mean, I think any of us who've been competing for a long time could probably just jump in and run a marathon or do an Ironman. I'm not saying it'd be pretty, but you could do it.
Yeah, I think when we were out to dinner, you accused me of interviewing you, and because I just kept pelting you with questions, because when you said you got ready in 5 weeks, I was like, perfect. I need to get ready very quickly and don't want to put a lot of work into this. So I was just drilling you with questions, which you did answer quite well, and I was really excited.
Yeah, but she knows how to swim.
She does know how to swim, which we did realize. But I have more than 5 weeks, so we'll be fine. We'll be fine. It's coming along. But I like that, I mean, there's a mental component to do, but just so we understand, like that Ironman that you're talking about that you got ready for 5 weeks, how long, like as I recall, it was like a 17-hour or something like that type day?
No, this one wasn't, actually. This one, so Patricia's an amazing athlete. So the swim was tough just because, there are, Ironman swims present their own challenges because you've got so many people swimming at once. Mm-hmm. You've got 2,000 people that start swimming at you. It can be really challenging, to say the least, especially if, you're new at that. And then the bike, it's like Placid that we did. We did Ironman Lake Placid in 2010, and I had no idea how hilly it was there. But, the second half of each 56-mile loop is straight uphill, and tandems don't climb well. I'm sure that there are people who would crush the time that we had, but again, I think we did pretty well considering that I had just met her and hadn't been training for it. But yeah, it took us like 8 hours on the bike, but then she's a great runner. So I just kind of tried not to screw up her run. And we ended up running like 4:30 or 4:40 I think it was 4:30 for the marathon, which I think is still the fastest. And again, I've only done one Ironman solo, and I was being really conservative, but I've guided 6 Ironmans or 7 Ironmans, and that's this by far the fastest run that I've done.
That's still a pretty legit time.
Yeah, seriously.
It is, yeah. I thought so.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean that's still.
But she killed that time 2 years later, or like the year later, with a couple of other guys. So I just want to make sure that people know she didn't. Her best time is not the 14:45 that we did.
And you ended up getting the title of the first like female guided by another female like crew then?
Yes. There's no Hall of Fame.
You didn't get a plaque
book,
or anything.
So, Mr. Guinness has not come to your home.
If somebody pops up in a decade and says, no, some girl did it in the 90s, fine, I will concede that. But as of now, I have not heard of anybody else doing any other female blind athlete doing an Ironman with a female guide before 2010.
That's so cool. Why do you think that is? Is it just because it's easier to find male guides, or?
A lot of women that I've found, so one of the things I try to do here is I love to recruit new guides. And unfortunately, the challenging thing is that there's no like central repository for like, or a database. There are a few places that you can go to try to find places to, like find blind athletes in your area or whatever, but there just aren't that many people doing it. But I will say that every blind person should have multiple guides that they can call on. I think it's a really bad idea to stick with only one guide all the time because, there are many complications associated with that. So I don't even know where I was going with that one, honestly. It's my cold talking. But what did you just ask me? And please edit this out because I really don't remember.
No, that's fine. You were on sort of recruiting new guides, and that was sort of your mission.
But we were talking about like men versus women.
Oh, why no one had done it before?
Like
And I honestly don't care if you. And I don't have a good answer for why no one had done it before because there were people doing the sport, but
the concept of guiding in Ironman was fairly new, even if in that time span, right? Like just generally.
Yeah, I would say so. I think you're probably seeing way more of it lately. When I started guiding in 2008, I don't even think I signed a waiver the first time I did it.
Oh wow.
Yeah, when we signed up for Placid, my name wasn't anywhere in the, now they'll take my name and my name shows up in the results, but it's under the physically challenged category, which I find kind of strange, but it's for safety reasons, not for anything else. But my name wasn't anywhere. So I remember we both wore the same bib. So you'll usually get like 2 running bibs in Ironman. And so we both wore the same bib. And so people would say like, Patricia. I think they actually thought our names were both Patricia, and I just remember hearing Patricia all over the course. It was really funny.
Like, wow, they found a guide with the same name.
So what about for swimming? Isn't that like, because then there'd be a risk because they only think you're one person basically, or are they registering you as 2 people but just like under one bib?
Now back then I honestly have no idea. I suppose the thing there was like as long as Patricia finishes, her guide is there, but.
Sure, I guess that's
you're tethered together, right? Like if she comes out of the water, you're coming out.
I guess.
But it's crazy. I don't actually know. Now it's 2 separate people, 2 separate ships that'll show up. But usually in the long races at least. But yeah, it's weird.
Okay, so we
but I think you're right. It's a new concept.
Yeah, we just mentioned the swim, and now I have to. Can you explain how the swim works as a guide? Because that seems like the craziest part to me.
So I think the swim's one of the more straightforward things in the race. Basically, you can be tethered in any number of ways. The most common ways I've seen are you're tethered around your waist or around your thigh with some sort of a bungee cord. In Australia, there's a couple of the guys that were doing the Ironman this December. I saw they were using, those like cables that'll attach you to your surfboard with the Velcro. So they used that and they were attached at the ankle. I prefer waist or thigh. I feel like that's easier for me to, have control. But in ITU or Olympic level racing, I think the tether has to be like exactly a meter, but in Ironman, they're not taking out like the tape measures or anything like that to see how long the tethers are. But I like to make sure I have enough space for arm clearance. So when I'm pulling through on the stroke, I don't hit the tether. Sometimes you can't avoid it, but I want to make sure it's not so long that the athlete can drift away, because the worst part is if the tether's too long and she like someone's swimming too far away, I'll have to like stop and grab the tether and kind of reel it into me.
Oh, jeez.
That's annoying, but yeah, so the goal is to swim pretty close together. I can never swim ahead of my athlete. I avoid that at all costs because I don't want to, it's not legal to assist with, forward movement in any way. And then my body will kind of act as the barrier on the other side. So the tether prevents them from going too far one way, and then my body is the block on the other. So sometimes you get hit in the face, and there's no way to avoid it.
Oh my gosh. That just seems crazy to me because the swim is hectic enough, like solo. So,
yeah. Well, I'll send you a video of this from Bustleton because again, I just did this Ironman in December, and it's a straight out and back around the Bustleton jetty, which is the longest like wooden jetty in the world, I think. And so it doesn't spread out a ton. And I don't think I've ever had a more physical swim. And I see it as I'm trying to protect my athlete too. So I like to bring up that I played water polo in high school, and that prepared me for some of these rougher swim. It really did. But people will try to swim between us. And so the thing is, if somebody gets between us, yes, there's a risk of them getting clotheslined. But the other risk is they're like, what is this thing in my face? And they can grab the tether and yank it, and they could potentially pull it off.
Yeah.
So that's a fear of mine. Yeah. And it's not their fault. Like, they don't know. But
Right.
it's, a lot going on.
Yeah. So do you guys practice together before the event? How does practicing for this go?
Well, ideally you'd want to practice a lot, but I tend to race with people that I don't live near.
Right.
And now, because I have raced with so many people, and I've guided like 10 or 11 people in triathlons, and you get to know the people you race with well, but you also, I think if you have raced with many different people with different preferences, it's easier to adapt to a new athlete. But I would say if anybody's trying to get into it, practice with a sighted friend, or try to make sure you're seeing whoever you're going to be racing with, and then practice swimming, because you got to see what they like, what they don't like, commands, how do you want to signal to each other, things like that.
I'm like looking at Peter now. I'm just like, I think we're gonna have to practice this in the pool at some point, just to see how
I would love to hear how that
goes. It's good couples therapy, really. So now, you've guided stuff then shorter than Ironman distance?
Yeah, I've guided everything from sprint up to Olympic. Guided one marathon as well. I know people are like, well, you did an Ironman, so you've done marathons, but running a marathon is different than doing an Ironman. It's very different.
Yeah, seriously. So which is harder then, the short course or the long course? Because I feel like the short course presents a ton of challenges, especially in terms of speed.
Oh, definitely. And there have been races where, it was actually with Patricia a year after the Ironman when I really understood what some of my limitations were. Because, ideally you want to race with people that you're a lot faster than, and sometimes it doesn't work that way. And also sometimes you just have a bad day. And I had a bad day with her in New York City, and that was when I realized, like, this, these guys really need to be racing with elite pro-level athletes if they're trying to go to that high level, if you're trying to go to the Paralympics. Now the women that go to the Paralympics race with pro athletes. So the woman that won the Paralympics this year, the girl in Australia, and she raced with Michaela Jones, an Olympic silver medalist and Kona champion from over a decade ago, obviously. But these are the people that should be guiding at the Paralympic level. And the short stuff is hard, especially especially because things like transitions matter so much more. And they're just less forgiving in a lot of ways.
How did you first get into guiding? I feel like we've glossed over this. It's kind of a weird, like, different thing to be getting into, especially as a competitive athlete. Like, not a lot of competitive athletes would jump from, like, being competitive for themselves to, like, helping other people.
And that was sort of what I was interested mostly in too, was a lot of us finished that collegiate where we had a purpose, a why on why it's part of collegiate racing, it's part of our community, we want to try and go pro or whatever. But when that starts going away and you're a master's athlete, like, how do you find purpose?
Don't even
right?
say it.
So yeah, I'm really intrigued to how you found that or what you found.
Well, and I think I don't actually, I do this talk where I tell this story a lot, but I'll give you guys the, like, actual sort of more in-depth version, which is it's not necessarily longer, but so graduated in 2006, 2007 I had a pretty good season, posted some times that were good for me, relatively speaking. And then I had a really hard year in 2008. So 2008 is when I started guiding, but I was dealing with just a lot of personal stuff. And I was just struggling. And I think I was, my sleep was all messed up, and I wasn't diagnosed, but I'm pretty confident that I had adrenal fatigue syndrome. And so I was signed up for the New York City Triathlon that year in 2008. And I was signed up in the elite age group wave, which I had done the year before, and I'd done well enough. But I was just feeling terrible. Like, I was having trouble running 10 minutes a mile, which was many minutes per mile slower than I would normally go. And I got I got a phone call from a friend of mine, this guy Matt Miller. He runs Base Nutrition now, and he had a charity called See Different, where he would connect blind athletes with guides. And I don't think it exists anymore, but anyway, it was somebody I knew, but I hadn't known any women that were doing it. And he said, hey, I have a girl coming into New York. She's doing the New York City Triathlon, but she doesn't have a guide yet. And this was 1 week before the race. And so, when some people paint this picture, they're like, oh, she was super competitive and she was, going to go out and kill this elite age group wave. And it's like, that's not the case. Like, I think that guiding that race helped me as much or more than it helped, the athletes that I raced with. And I also just had a fantastic time. So thankfully she was a new athlete. Even though I wasn't feeling great, like I was still totally able to keep up with whatever she needed me to do. But in terms of my own abilities, I wasn't anywhere near where I wanted to be for myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the New York City Triathlon, for anyone that hasn't done it, because I've done that one as well. That one is no joke. That's a fast freaking race. Like
it is.
And the elite amateur wave is terrifying. Like,
oh, did you do that one?
I did that one in 2010. Yeah, the dive off of the thing into the Hudson River.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh.
No, so I did that. I'd actually done it the past 2 years, and again had done pretty well. But like, oh man, I remember practicing dives and like, how do you? Because I didn't swim. I was a water polo player. You don't dive in.
Yeah.
I was like, how do I keep my goggles on? Like, what do I do?
I think I actually dove with one hand on my goggles and one hand out. It was not smooth.
I might have done that too. Yeah.
I was just
I'm glad you
terrified.
Not many people know that wave it's frightening.
Yeah. Holy crap.
Didn't it get canceled because the Hudson was so dirty recently or something? Or was that this year?
I think the swim got canceled in the past couple of years because of that.
Did it? I don't...
There was a spill or something.
I did it 10 years in a row, but it was never canceled when I did it. But you will have the fastest swim of your life, which is pretty fun.
I know, right? You could literally just like float and you'd finish.
That's my type of swimming.
That's why when anybody ever tells you what their best times are for things, find out what race they're talking about. Because you can cut a good amount of time off of your races depending on what the swim is like.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that one's pretty excellent.
Okay, so that's guiding how you got into it roughly. So I think that makes sense. There was sort of an opportunity there.
Yeah.
And then, you did that one race. So then did you feel like that was like, there's a need there and it was, kept you active? Like, how did you make that choice, I guess? I guess I'm always intrigued by the choice to stop. Like you stopped racing just for you.
Yeah, and I think the more I did it, the more I enjoyed it. And then there became a greater need. So at first I just knew this girl, Kim, and we did the New York City Tri, and then I was like, hey, we had a lot of fun. You want to do the Chicago Tri as well? And so we did that, and that was 2008. And then 2009, she and I did the New York City Tri. And I think that was it in 2009, I think. And then we went to a cycling camp. So 2009, I raced, actually 2009 I raced, I think 63 times because I was laid off for most of that year. So I raced all the time, track, road, cyclocross, triathlons. It was insane. And then 2010 is when I think the switch flipped for me, which was the Ironman. I think it was guiding the Ironman that really started to motivate me to just get totally into it. And that's also when I started meeting more and more people. But, so Molly's on an Ironman, so you know the feeling when you cross that finish line. And it honestly doesn't even matter how fast or slow you go. You're like, this was an accomplishment, you know? It's kind of addictive, but I really enjoyed the idea of helping. And it's not just helping, because it's not just this, altruistic thing. You get so much out of it, but to cross the finish line with another person is way better than crossing the finish line by yourself. Way better.
Really cool. Peter, keep that in mind during the race and maybe slow down on the bike so we can cross the line together.
I don't think so.
I don't think that counts. I don't think that's quite the same thing.
Yeah, when's your race?
July 29th. It's Ironman Canada.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, shoot. I thought it was July 31st. I thought I had 2 more days. Oh, boy.
Okay, well, how about this? You guys can think about the fact that, 7 years prior, Patricia, did this. It's basically exactly 7 years to the day that you guys are you're doing this. So
Perfect.
Well,
you can think about
motivation.
that.
Yeah.
I like it. Okay, so I have to ask, which is more stressful, or which was more stressful, competing on your own or guiding? Because I feel like they both present kind of unique stressors.
That depends on the day. Like if you're feeling great when you're on your own, I mean, we know that feeling when you're in the zone and you're like, I mean, I remember my best New York City try, and I was like, I'm flying right now. This is, again, relatively speaking, for me, I was flying. And there are some very stressful elements to guiding. And also, think about, I mean, for the athlete and for you, clearly, but think about how stressful it can be when you're physically hurting, but you're connected to somebody. Like, imagine if you had to do all of your workouts, like, with somebody right next to you. I mean, there are some times when you just really wish you could be by yourself. Anything the other person does is going to annoy the crap out of you. I mean, it's almost like being in a relationship. But so there are times when you're just like, I want to be anywhere but where I am in this moment. And I think both people have that feeling. So that can be really stressful. Or when there's something that's just out of your control, and that extra pressure of knowing that you could just be letting someone down in this moment. Because letting yourself down, okay, you can get over that. But if you let someone else down, that's scary stuff to me.
Yeah. Have you ever had a moment in a triathlon where you're like, oh my God, I don't know that I'm going to finish, like, with this person that I'm guiding?
Yeah. A couple of times it's happened. And it's actually past a couple of times it happened with the same person. Well, and one of the times was Ironman Arizona in 2011. And I don't normally get like leg cramps or anything like that, but in this race, my legs just started seizing up. Tina's convinced that it's because we were virtually hypothermic on the swim. But when we got to the run, I was really worried I was going to like fall and pull her down. And this was her first Ironman, and she was trying to hit this goal. And so I ended up pulling out at mile 13, and she had a lot of teammates on the course, and people just helped her get to the end. But I was still new at guiding, so I was devastated by it. But Tina was really cool, and she did really well in the race. But then most recently I had, I have some sort of exercise-induced asthma, which I was not aware of, but I had an asthma attack in Ironman 70.3 Augusta, so the half Ironman in Augusta, and I couldn't breathe like 7 miles into the run, and so I ended up in the ER and like all this stuff. And in that case, there was some guy on the course he was having a bad day, and he saw that we were in distress, so he helped. He was basically holding me up. And then I knew I had to stop. Well, I didn't want to stop, but Tina was like, well, you have to go get help. And I asked the guy, can you help? Well, or maybe Tina asked him. I was kind of delirious. But he ended up stepping in. He took my chip from me and finished with her. And I read his post afterward. I mean, he was the ultimate hero in that instance. I mean, it sounded like he had one of the best days of his life. And so I feel like, I'm not saying it was meant to happen, but what a cool thing to be able to step in and just truly save the day for someone.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so bad things happen, but sometimes good things come out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good. Like, there's two stories there. Like, I think there's that you have to have that communication with your partner where, it's sport. Like, you're not going to have a good day every day, and that's just part of the challenge, right? Like, they have to embrace that context of the sport is that they're actually getting themselves and their guide to the finish line, right? Like, that's part of it. Then also that, another person was able to find, that there's a deeper meaning to sport or another why to sport, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, exactly. And I'm lucky because I've been doing it so long and I've done so many races that one race isn't like, I don't question my own abilities anymore, but I can imagine if you're getting into guiding and you're new to it and you have moments like that can be pretty stressful.
Mm-hmm. Now I want to talk about how to get into guiding, but first I want to go with what's like the coolest guiding experience that you've had, because let's start the how to get into guiding on like a positive, not like I was on the side of the road and couldn't keep going note.
Yeah, right. I mean, there's so many
you've been to so many cool places with it.
Well, just recently.
Yeah, I mean, Australia, right?
Yeah.
That was, Tina, the same woman that I've had those bad experiences with. Thankfully, she we've had many other positive ones, but she asked me if I wanted to do Ironman Australia this past year. And, of course I wasn't going to say no to that, but man, Australia is a cool country. that was amazing. And, the people were great. The course was great. I mean, and when we were on the run, everyone just kept calling us legends. I know it's just an Australian thing to do, but man, that's just like such a fun compliment.
Yeah, for sure.
I've never experienced better energy on the course. And people are always so kind when you're guiding. People just get really excited to see an athlete like that on the course. And that's, whether you want it or not, that's kind of a gift or potentially a curse, depending, because visually impaired athletes are athletes. They want to be seen as athletes, not as like, oh, wow, look at you, accomplishing this thing. So there are two sides to it, but I do still think it's pretty neat. I guess the way I put it is, if you just saw like me or Polly running in a race, you wouldn't be like, oh man, she's overcoming an obstacle, right? You see somebody with some sort of physical challenge, maybe they don't look like the traditional racer. You see them on the course and you're like, and people who are on the sidelines, maybe you're giving them this thought that, hey, maybe I can do something I didn't think I could do. I don't think that when I'm by myself working out that I make people feel that way. And so, again, for better or for worse, I think it's pretty neat, but maybe I feel like that because I don't motivate people like that.
I think you do.
I think it's, I mean, it doesn't look like it should be hard for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And again, a lot of the blind athletes I know are better athletes than many of the sighted people I know, but it still is, it's a challenge, like just to find people to train with in your workouts. There are additional obstacles. And so I think it's pretty badass.
Now, I asked you this question at dinner too, so hopefully it's okay to ask you this, but most of these experiences are like altruistic in that like you're sort of paying as if you were going into the event. Like there's the odd exception if it's like excessive travel or something like that, but most of the time you're sort of on your own dime and doing it as a volunteer, I guess, essentially.
Yeah. It definitely helps to. So, these people, there usually isn't a ton of outside funding for these things. Like if you're at high level races, you can be a pro triathlete. The Paralympians are professional athletes and they get paid to do this, but anything else, it's strictly recreation. And so it's expensive. Tandem bikes are expensive. Travel is expensive. And so asking an athlete to pay for all of the expenses associated with their race and then also for their guide, that's a lot to ask. And I don't know a ton of people who are in a position to be able to do that. So, typically I pay for my own flights. If somebody can't afford it, like, Tina is incredibly generous. She knew that Australia was going to be tough for me. So she paid for my ticket, but, James came, my fiance came, and we paid for all of his stuff. And so I try to pay for a good portion of things. It's not, so I probably spent a lot of money on guiding, I'll say that.
But it's worth it. Like
it's totally worth it.
I work with a lot of masters cyclists and endurance athletes, and a lot of them are doing these events increasingly, gravel grinders and stuff, as just in the same way you describe it, getting out there, staying active. They want a motivation, they want to experience, they want that feeling of crossing the line, but they have, usually there's some sort of time or some sort of goal. They maybe done it before, but usually it's crossing the line and just a crazy experience. They want to cross Leadville off the thing. You want to cross Ironman off their bucket list, right? So what you're talking about doesn't seem crazy to me. Like, and it's almost additive in that you're getting this other experience with this other person, right? And you're giving. So I think this would be attractive to a lot of people.
But it is competitive, so don't get me wrong on that. Sometimes people just want to finish, but a lot of the time they have their own very specific goals, and it's your job to help them achieve their goal. And it's also, I think, your job to say no if you're not the right person. Like, you can't be greedy about it. I don't guide. I prefer not to guide shorter races, like ITU type races, like high level competition races, just because I know there are people that are better at it than I am. They are, and I will do it if there's a need, but I would rather have someone who either has been a professional triathlete or has guided ITU before, because there are a lot of rules. And so sometimes it's better just to say no to things and to help the person find a different guide. But, you have to respect their athleticism and their goals and know that it's, you can't just be like, well, I'm not that competitive on my own, so maybe I'll guide. That's not how it works.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Speaking of which, actually, so what does training look like for you now? Like, if you're gonna have an Ironman coming up, is it the same as when you trained for Ironman, like, solo?
Oh man, when I trained for my Ironman, when I was the only one I did alone, I was really young and I was really scared I wouldn't finish. So I had a really, really, really strict training plan, and I was in college, so
Yeah.
I had a lot more time. But now, I do approach it in the same way in terms of wanting to make sure I get the same number of, getting the miles in terms of on the bike and on the run. I'm notorious for not swimming ever.
Except when I'm there, we swam.
Yeah, that was so fun.
That was so much fun.
Yeah. It's the only thing that's missing in Charlotte is open water swimming. But Austin, Texas is not limited in terms of places you can swim, which is cool. But yeah, I don't swim much. But if I were if I were doing my own Ironman, I would swim more just to get that extra speed. But if I'm racing with somebody and I know that I can comfortably swim their pace, I will tend to put as much time in on the bike as possible because that's where I can add the most value as a guide.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, we should put this in the guise that you're not a professional guide, but you're traveling a lot. You have I don't know if you want to describe your job at all, but you travel a lot for your job doing presentations and stuff. So like, it's not like you're just at home pedaling on your trainer all day long.
Oh God, no. Yeah, no, I am. So I work at a large mutual fund company. I just relocated to Charlotte. And so I'm traveling minimum twice a month, I would say, depending. And when I travel, I don't have my bike. So yeah, that's a fair point that, it's really hard to get that in. So I try to run when I'm on the road. Right now I'm focusing a lot on strength training. But I've got, this year I don't have any full Ironmans, but I've got a half in like 6 weeks. So it is hard, but that's the same. I mean, most people I know that do these races, have jobs and families and stuff. I don't have any kids yet, so that's easier. But, it can be really hard. And sometimes I get really stressed about the fact that I don't get as much volume in as I want, but I also think it's just important to get enough sleep, and that's usually my number one priority because I've done that thing where you mess with your sleep, and the consequences are far too great.
No, I realized it wasn't that recent, or it wasn't that long ago, actually, embarrassingly, but if I don't sleep, I just basically just don't train now because it's just not worth it.
It really is. Except the worst part is your anxiety is heightened anyway because you haven't slept. And so then you're like, I need to work out, but you really shouldn't.
Exactly.
Okay. I'm wondering, just to drill in a bit more on the sort of time crunch training a bit. Is there something like when you run, when you're on the road, like, are you just like plodding along at your Ironman pace, or do you do like a certain interval thing? And then similar question for the bike. So maybe let's start with the run, but what do you do when you run?
So running, especially if I don't have access to like a track or something, I will, when I'm in New York, which, I'm in New York a lot, one of my favorite things to do is to do intervals where I'll run maybe, 2 minutes at, race pace, but not Ironman race pace, but, 5 or 10K race pace, and then I'll do 1 or 2 minutes off. And I found that to be really effective. And then if I'm on a treadmill, I will, one of my standard fast work or short workouts on the treadmill is to warm up for like 10 minutes and then do kind of a ladder where you're every 15 to 30 seconds you are decreasing or increasing the speed on the treadmill until it gets really uncomfortable. So I kind of improvise, but there are ways to get in speed work no matter where you are.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's definitely the thing I find with endurance athletes. With endurance athletes is that they miss that speed work and sort of hit like a plateau of how fast they can sort of turn their legs over and how fast they can move forward. So that makes sense.
Oh yeah, and I think you're right. And actually, after this last Ironman, I felt kind of sloppy. I was like, I just missed the speed and the strength and stuff. So that's what I've been doing this winter is I've kind of been neglecting the bike, and I'm just trying to run and do strength stuff to just see if I can get some of that speed back, because it definitely, it goes away.
Okay. And then for the bike, is there anything specific you do? Like I see you ride the trainer a fair bit. So how do you not go crazy on the trainer?
Yeah.
How do you not go crazy? Yeah. Well, I have, I've worked with lots of coaches, and so I have sort of this bank of workouts, although I really probably should get a coach, and I do recommend that anybody who's training for anything should get a coach. Yeah. So don't be like me, but I'll go in and I just look up old workouts, and depending on how long I'm going to be on the trainer, I will do intervals, and there are some, I just have some great workouts, and anything that causes you to have to change the intensity level even multiple times within an interval is probably the best thing to help avoid going totally nuts. So you've got a 20-minute interval, but you're going from, your power numbers are going up or down depending on where you are in that interval. That makes it a lot. I will say that really makes the time go by faster.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think people miss.
And I watch a lot of movies.
Nice.
Yep.
Okay. I think the next thing was where, like, is there, and I asked you this too, but you said, and you mentioned it or alluded to it in the beginning, but is there any sort of website or way to connect with people if people are thinking that guiding might be for them?
Yeah, there are a number. I put together a list of these sites, so I could list them all off, but if you go to, I have a blog that I don't update, so this isn't like a, hey, go visit my blog thing, but I really don't update it, but there's, it's Carolyn Bikes, but it's Caroline, so Caroline, bikes.com, and I have a list of resources, so it's on this a tab that says resources, and it's got a whole bunch of organizations. But there is United in Stride is a website that connects blind athletes with runners, and they're still trying to get up to critical mass of users. And the point of that is to be able to get athletes to, even if you're traveling, to look on and say, okay, who's signed up as a guide in my area, and you can message people. Some people have found that to be effective. People are always welcome to contact me, because I do know a number of people that are always looking for guides, and same goes for blind athletes. I hope some of them are listening too. And then there's always Achilles International. They have a huge presence in New York. Catapult is a new organization in Houston. There's CAF, Challenged Athletes Foundation. So there are a bunch, but you really do have to put some work in. Most of the people I've met have been through just. I did Twitter searches. There's a Facebook group, like Guiding Eyes. I can't remember the full name of it, but it's on my resources blog. But put your name out there as often as possible. Don't expect that if you just say, oh, hey, I want a guide, that someone's just going to call you. I wish it worked that way, but it's harder to get connected than that.
Yeah, for sure. And now if you think like, okay, this might be cool if I try this, is there would you recommend practicing with a sighted friend to see if it's possible to guide? Because I don't necessarily know that I would have the temperament for it or be any good at it. So I'd be afraid of showing up and, tripping somebody or
Well, I'm going to jump in on this one, Carolyn. I can take a shot at it, but we're doing an event here in Ontario called Cycle for Sight, and it's like a charity ride to help the foundation fighting blindness. But there's an opportunity in that to do guiding, and there's a 50K version, and they sort of have tandems, that they sort of source and help people try it even.
Oh, please do it. Please
yeah,
do it.
So there must be lots of lower key things where it's people just even trying it on both sides, right?
Yeah, and please, I'm begging you, if either of you have the opportunity to pilot a tandem, because I know that either of you would be amazing at it. When it comes to piloting on the bike, I think being a bike racer is so helpful. No, not trying to knock triathletes, but
but to knock
you don't have
triathletes for a second.
I don't think I would have made it through my first race if I hadn't been confident on the bike. And I wasn't a naturally strong bike handler, but I spent a lot of time riding through Manhattan, racing cyclocross, racing in road races and crits, and that really helped because you have to be confidence on the bike is the number one thing. You have to feel don't go into the experience feeling nervous. Practicing with a sighted person on the back of the tandem is definitely helpful, but seriously, you guys have to try it because I think you'll be really, really good at it. And then Molly, to your point, the temperament thing, I mean, that is real. I think patience is really, really important, but a lot of it isn't just patience. It's getting to know the person that you're racing with because people are so different.
Totally.
Some people want me to chat and be motivational. Some people are like, please don't talk. Thankfully, not the people who do the Ironmans with me, but you know, in shorter races too. I mean, you have to respect what that athlete wants because the number one thing that people should take away from this is when you're guiding, it's not your race. You shouldn't do it because you want to get a free entry into an Ironman because guides don't pay. You should do this because you want to help another person achieve a goal for themselves, you know, for his or herself. That's the reason to do it.
Yeah.
Yes, you will get a lot out of it, but yeah, you are a person, so you shouldn't. It's not like you should take a lot of shit or, you know, allow somebody to get mad at you or something like that in a race. But you really do have to be patient and respect what they're going through.
Yeah, absolutely. And then are there any other, you kind of hit on a couple of them. I was going to say, what are mistakes that new guiding people make? And I think you hit on a couple of them, but are there any like kind of technical ones that you've noticed?
I think not reading the situation. And I think maybe I bring that up because I have been the type, depending on where I was in my life, you know, I've been the type to kind of come in with my full personality, just like, you know, out there, and I would take over a situation, and that can be helpful, but just make sure you're not, just make sure you're reading the situation, you're reading the person. This is a new relationship. If you're just getting into guiding, I mean, approach it as though you're approaching a new romantic relationship. Get to know the person really well. Find out the things they like and don't like. Talk to people who have guided. I'm really easy to find online. People can always ask me questions, and I can connect you with other people that know, you know, a lot about this stuff as well. But yeah, I guess mistakes are just, I mean, here's the thing. So even if you're not going very fast, it is not, I mean, I won't say it's always tiring, but you have to maintain a really high level of focus. I mean, I have run people into things before. I have tripped and people have fallen. I mean, that will happen, and that's not necessarily a mistake. So, you know, maybe, and I did this in a roundabout way, but maybe the number one mistake is worrying too much about making a mistake. Because if you worry that much, it'll consume you. I mean, you're going to fall at some point. Your athlete's going to fall at some point. This isn't new, and that doesn't mean you're a bad guide.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that makes a ton of sense. Peter, do you have any other questions? I think that was my last one.
No, I think that's really good. I'm excited now, even more so than after our dinner. But
yeah, right.
The McDonald's we're stealing internet from is starting to really heat up, and we got they're pouring Cokes at increasing rate here.
Please ride the tandem.
All right, we will.
Sorry, no,
we will.
Talked over you.
We might have to try to do that, I guess. We're talked into it.
Oh,
okay.
Come on, Molly.
I know. I'm terrified about it, honestly. Like the handling part.
No, I mean, the being tied to someone's a little new, but like I've done a lot of mountain bike stage races and stuff, and it's a lot what you're talking about is the exact same.
Yeah, I'm going to have to ask you about mountain bike racing at some point because I'm terrified of it and I really want to get into it. But I think especially mountain bike and cyclocross racers have such a huge advantage because they're such great bike handlers.
Yeah, I mean, you would, I think, do great in something like a Dirty Kanza or Leadville or something like that. Like, it's not that technical, but just long, long days of pedaling. And, you know, I think you have pretty much most of what you need is from Ironman and stuff for that.
And I'm really interested in trying new stuff, so I'm going to bother you about that later.
Please do.
Awesome. All right, we'll let you go before McDonald's kicks us out here.
Okay, real quick, where can everybody find you?
Okay, so I'm on Facebook. You can just search for my name, Carolyn, Carolin that's my email, but Gaynor, Gaynor. I do have that blog, Carolyn Bikes. Instagram is the same thing. Twitter is the same handle. So Carolyn Bikes. It's Carolyn, but it's pronounced Carolyn, but it's spelled Caroline. And it's really easy to contact me. Certainly they could reach out to you, and if somebody wants to ask questions, feel free to give my email out. But we just need to get more athletes into this, more competitive athletes. And if you know any blind people that don't realize that this is a thing that they can do, encourage the people you know in your life that have, visual impairments to get active, because I think it's just such a rewarding thing, and it's such a great community.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for chatting. It was super fun catching up, and we'll have to do it again over, more food and more wine next time.
For sure.
Yes, please, very soon. And I'm always happy to help. So I really appreciate you guys asking me to come on. I'm very excited about it.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Consummate Athlete podcast. To check out all of the show notes for this episode, you can head over to consummateathlete.com. And we would love to hear from you about what you thought about the podcast. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Molly J. Herford.
And at Peter Glassford.
And we would also love it if you would pop over to iTunes and subscribe to the podcast so you can tell every time a new episode, a new sport comes out. And if you would leave us a review, let us know how you're liking it, how we're doing, if there's anything you'd like to hear more of. That would be amazing. And you can find us over on Facebook now, facebook.com/consummateathlete. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you next time.